Well, we welcome everybody back here to the show. I'm Johnny Kane, your host, and we are talking NBA because the NBA season will be here before long. Regular season doesn't get underway until middle to late October, but the preseason schedule gets underway in early October. And there will be a lot of intriguing storylines heading into the 2025-26 season for sure. It'll be interesting to see if the East is stronger than the West this year. And obviously the Pistons with the turnaround that they had from a season ago, tripling the win total and obviously being the sixth seed in the Eastern Conference, that's kind of the bar. And now everybody says, how much higher can we climb in the East? And so it's going to be exciting, obviously, watching the season unfold. I know Media Day is coming up on August the 29th. That's a Friday. So I'll be heading over there talking to a lot of the players, a lot of the new faces that have come into the fold. And certainly excited for what should be really another exciting season in the NBA here in Detroit. So we'll be following that intimately. But again, if you look across the league, some of the storylines that exist, especially out west, one of the compelling storylines is what's happening in Los Angeles. And we're not talking about the Lakers necessarily because as LeBron James will be back for another season. We hear plenty about them and the goings on in that market, but really the focus of this week's commentary is on the LA Clippers, which is the second most talked about franchise in that city. Obviously, James Harden being the catalyst for that team, Kawhi Leonard when healthy, but that's a big when. And can he stay healthy this year? They've added some veteran presence to an already I hate to say old, but in terms of high school athletes and in terms of the NBA body, it is an older roster. It is a veteran-laden team out in Los Angeles, and I feel like their window to win is now, as it was last year, but they were bounced in the first round. And how much longer will that window be open for them to contend out in the Western Conference? Matt O'Brien is a Sportscaster.com contributor. You can find him on social channels under the handle Boston Buckets. So he's a big Celtics guy, but he takes a deep dive into what's happening out in Los Angeles with the Clippers heading into the upcoming season.
The Los Angeles Clippers already had one of the oldest rosters in the NBA, and they just went ahead and got even older. The Clippers added the legendary guard Chris Paul back to their roster after a long-year departure. Paul last played for the Clippers way back in 2017. But the only reason the Clippers were able to acquire Paul in the first place is all because of James Harden. James Harden had the option to sign for $54 million a year, but he made a smart team move and he took a slight discount, taking around $41 million a year. That extra money allowed the Clippers to acquire Paul in free agency. But it's not only Chris Paul the Clippers went out and acquired this offseason, they went ahead and acquired two other veteran presences, Brook Lopez and Bradley Beal. Now, if the Clippers took these three new signings, James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, they would have the oldest starting lineup in the NBA. Now, naturally, this won't happen because of other younger talents they have on the team, like Zubac, their starting center. But it is interesting to see this Clippers team get older rather than younger. The Clippers did just get defeated in the first round in this year's playoffs, and it's really not looking too hopeful for them, especially now that the average age of the players on their roster totals to 33 years old. Last year's oldest roster went to the Philadelphia 76ers, who was barely over 28 years old. And even if we look at a team like the NBA champion Oklahoma City Thunder, they were around 25 and a half. Now, granted, that was the youngest championship team we've seen in quite a while, but if anything, I think that's a sign. Maybe creating an older roster isn't necessarily the best way to win a championship. But the thing with this Clippers squad is it's not just the old guys. As we mentioned earlier, they have players like Zubac and the newly acquired John Collins. That's going to allow some of these older guys to come off the bench as role players. And I think the Clippers' power really lies on three things. The first one being James Harden. If James Harden can play at a somewhat elite level, the Clippers are going to be good, there's no doubt about it. He was pretty much single-handedly carrying them last season, but that does fall on the second thing carrying the Clippers' season, Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard is no doubt a masterclass basketball player, but his issues rely on his injuries. Kawhi Leonard misses a ton of time, it happens very consistently. But when he's on the court, the Clippers are a million times better. If we could somehow get a full season of basketball out of Kawhi Leonard, and he's healthy and fully warmed up for the playoffs, I think the Clippers are extremely dangerous. So while 1 and 2 are definitely our biggest contributors to the Clippers' success, I think the third factor is super important as well, and that's Bradley Beal. Beal is an interesting signing for the Clippers because he's coming off a pretty atrocious stint in Phoenix. He was one of the highest paid players in the league when he got there, and he did basically nothing to prove his worth. Now, luckily for the Clippers, they got him on a much better deal, only paying him around $11 million for 2 years. So if he doesn't end up working out, it's not a huge deal. But if he does end up playing somewhat well, maybe even to the caliber of a near third option, that would be absolutely huge for the Los Angeles Clippers and would definitely help them in this playoff push. Another huge issue for this Clippers team is that they don't have a lot of draft capital in the near future. They do possess a 2027 pick, but the Oklahoma City Thunder reserve the right to swap theirs for it, meaning that they will get a first round draft selection, but it might not be the best player available. And other than that, the only pick that they possess that they completely own to themselves is all the way in 2030. So if I had to take a guess, I believe this is probably the last stint for the Los Angeles Clippers. There's not much going on for them after this group. And now the question to ask is this team good enough to win a championship? Well, we didn't get a ton of playoff experience from the Clippers last round. As we mentioned earlier, they did get bounced in the first round. But it is interesting to note how that series went. They were pinned up against the Denver Nuggets. And not only did they have a good series against the Nuggets, they took them to Game 7. And for many, including myself, I actually thought the Clippers were going to win that Game 7. And I think definitely the most important thing to note in this series is that Kawhi was playing. And when Kawhi plays, the Clippers are a million times better. Had that Game 7 just went a little bit differently, the Clippers would have been pinned up in the second round against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And as we just mentioned, the Clippers took the Nuggets to Game 7. Well, the Nuggets took the Thunder to Game 7, who eventually went on to win the NBA championship. I'm not saying I think the Clippers could have beat the Thunder, and I'm not saying that I think they would have taken them to Game 7. But it is interesting to look at the numbers on paper like that. Maybe there is a world where this Clippers team could have put up a good fight against our reigning champs. Hey, maybe there's even a world where they beat them. In that perfect world, the Clippers would have been up against the Minnesota Timberwolves in the Western Conference Finals, where they definitely would have had way more experience than that team. And the Timberwolves didn't do much against the Thunder, so I'm sure a Clippers team on that high of a run would definitely have defeated Minnesota. Would they have beaten the Pacers in the finals? Now we might be getting a little far along. But it is interesting to see this aging Clippers team, and I'm super excited to see what they are going to do with a playoff run.
That was Matt O'Brien, a Sportscaster.com contributor, with his take on the LA Clippers' chances heading into the 25-26 season. Again, the NBA season tips off in October. The Detroit Pistons open their preseason slate October 6th at Memphis. When we come back, we're going to shift our focus and talk mixed martial arts, Ultimate Fighting Championship, MMA, and UFC on the docket, and how you, as a viewer, will benefit by the new vision. That's coming up next here on Open Mic.